Welcome to the session Architecting for Success and Runway, featuring Scalable Capital and Gronda. My name is Alexander Bartsch, and I'm a Senior Solutions Architect at AWS. And I'm pleased to be joined today with Juan, CTO at Gronda, who will join me on stage in a bit, as well as Nikolai, Head of Engineering at Scalable Capital. So let's get started. Let's take a quick look at the agenda. What are we talking about? So the session is all about tools, tactics, strategies, and also real-world customer stories for architecting for success and Runway. What does it mean? Well, we want to talk about how to extend Runway and basically spend less to get more. And this also means to take control of your cost, understand cost, and then also optimize in a systematic way. We will look at some best practices that I will share. And then also we have real-world stories. Startup cost optimization journey from Juan, from Gronda, and also how to take control in a hyper-growth startup setup with Nikolai from Scalable Capital. So, first question I want to ask for everyone. When you look at your workloads that you're building in the cloud, can you answer the question, are you well architected? Quick show of hands, are you well architected? Okay, I see two hands. Well, I think the first issue with this question might be, what does it even mean to be well architected? How do you know what best practices there are? And if you're following, how do you measure your workloads? How do you improve them? And for that, there's actually a mechanism for your cloud journey. And this mechanism is called the well-architected framework. The AWS well-architected framework is a collection of all the best practices and design principles and tools and tactics that we have collected over the last decade by helping customers build their workloads in the cloud and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And helping you to build secure, high-performing, cost-optimized, efficient architectures and workloads. And it's really a mechanism for your cloud journey, helping you to learn about the best practices, to measure. We have the well-architected tool available in the console, where you can answer questions and see actually if you're following the best practices or not. And then also you can improve. You can define risk items. The tool will actually show you, okay, well, in security, there's two more things that you should really consider. The AWS well-architected framework is built out of 6 different pillars. I already mentioned, we are talking, of course, about security, super important. We're talking about performance and more. I will show them in a bit. And for each of those pillars, we have a whole set, a white paper available, a lot of the information we gathered to share with you. And we have some high-level design principles. Those are guiding principles that will help you design your workloads and also, as I said, measure if you're following those. And to help you measure, we also have a set of questions. So basically, the questions will help you identify if maybe there's some gap, or maybe if you're following the best practices. Design principles are high level. They should really apply generally. And then also we share best practices. Best practices also can be tricky in some regards because your workloads, of course, are very different. Some of you might be in financial services or healthcare or some other regulated industries. And then there can be trade-offs that you need to consider. But we are also here to help you with that. I already mentioned the 6 pillars. So namely, we have operational excellence, we have security, reliability, performance efficiency, cost optimization, and sustainability. Don't worry, today it's really about the real-world customer stories and experience we want to share. So I will not give an overview of all of those. We have white paper available. You can also approach me afterwards if you want to know more about one of those. As an example, and because we want to talk about architecting for Runway, I want to focus on cost optimization and show you a little bit of what we have to offer and how we view cost optimization. First of all, what is cost optimization even? So sometimes when we discuss cost optimization, people may say, okay, well, yeah, let's just reduce the AWS bill. But question to you, is a low AWS bill itself cost optimization? I would argue no. Cost optimization is not about just having a low bill. If it's in the relation to the business value that you're trying to achieve or that you actually want to achieve, right? If you have a low bill but you're not providing any business value, what good is it, right? So a workload really is cost optimized if we're thinking about efficiency, right? So technology exists to create some business value, and cost optimization is really about the question like how can we do it as efficiently as possible? And we will take a look at this in today's session. I already mentioned the design principles. I quickly want to talk about those. It's a little bit as mental models, right? So we are not going to go into too much detail, but I want you to have them in the back of your minds for all the other things that we're going to discuss today. First one here is practice cloud financial management. This sounds a little bit enterprisey maybe at first. Sometimes also now we're talking about FinOps, right? But what that basically boils down is having some dedicated staff, time, thoughts about the cloud financial, right? So not just having some accountant looking at the AWS bill and say like, yeah, looks good, I don't know what all the positions mean, right? Or maybe the CTO just having this as a duty, but really dedicating some time to it, right? Doesn't need to be a whole department, but having a function that is considered with the cloud financials. Next one is adopting a consumption model. So here it's really about don't just run things, right? I mean, running and starting to run workloads in the cloud is good, right? But also destroy things, turn things off if you don't need them anymore. For example, scale down, right? Make use of the elasticity in the cloud. Maybe staging environment can be shut down on the weekends, right? So really think about this consumption model and mindset. And we're going to talk about this actually where serverless technologies come in and help you a lot as well. Measuring overall efficiency. So here it's really about understanding not just what's the cost of running the workload, but also what's the business value, right? So what do I get out of running my workloads? How am I contributing to the business value? And then I can put this in relation to what's the cost and how it relates. And then I can work on making this more efficient. Stop spending money on undifferentiated heavy lifting. So here it's really about thinking, okay, what are the parts where I'm differentiating myself, right? And that should, in the best case, be the business value that you're creating, right? Can you be your business logic, the application code you're writing? Running a database probably doesn't differentiate you from any other company out there also running the database, right? So think about what are the parts in your business where you can differentiate yourself. And we will see how we can help you with that. And lastly here is analyzing and attributing expenditure. So taking control of your cost, understanding your cost, gaining visibility. And that's something which is now possible in the cloud, right? Think about like hardware in a data center. Like it wasn't really possible like before to understand what's the cost of a port in a network switch, right? Now we can attribute this cost to like a network switch, for example. So let's talk about total cost of ownership, right? TCO. It's really a journey, right? So starting at maybe a stereotypical journey here, moving from on-premise with a lift and shift to the cloud. This is what traditional TCO comparison look at, right? But it's only a tiny part. There's a lot more to do. There are a couple of steps you can do. First step would be, for example, instance right sizing, right? So maybe your instances are running at 30% utilization. Well, there's a lot of potential there, right? To scale down the instances, to right-size the instances. Improving elasticity, right? I already mentioned like auto-scaling. So thinking about, can you like scale down, scale up if needed. Also, once you did it, optimizing the storage. And then you end up at an optimized lift and shift scenario. But there's more, right? So it's really like the economic case improves through the different steps. Then I already mentioned like measuring and monitoring and then improving, right? Once you measured and once you understand what's happening, how is the cost contributing, then you can also optimize and see like, there's like traffic across the different availability zones. I can optimize that, right? Thinking about managed services, how can you remove like undifferentiated heavy lifting, right? So maybe you save money by not running the instances yourself. You don't run a database on a virtual machine, but rather use a managed database. And finally, we really end up in this part of modernization, about refactoring, right? Thinking about not just managed services, but also maybe how can you refactor your applications and get to a part where you have serverless architecture. How are you leveraging them? And that's actually what I want to talk a little bit more in depth right now. First of all, what does it even mean, right? I'm talking about heavy lifting. Well, what's the heavy lifting here? So here we see a stack of some of the things that you need to be considered when you deliver something, right? There's physical infrastructure underlying. There's compute, storage database, and so on. On the top, we have the business logic. That's actually what you want to deliver, right? You want to deliver business logic and then business value. And especially today, organizations are more and more under pressure to reduce the operational overhead, to save cost, and to deliver this business value faster, like deliver services, deliver products faster. And that's actually the core of serverless, right? So serverless is all about removing all of this part that you can see here, the heavy lifting, by using a serverless service. And serverless means you are focusing on creating the business value. You are focusing on the business logic part, the API part. And that's really like the core of serverless. And when we talk about serverless, it's not just compute. It's not just Lambda. Sometimes people say, serverless, yeah, I heard about Lambda before, right? But Lambda is not the only thing that we have. Lambda is great, right? It's an event-driven, pay-as-you-go compute service where you can just give your code and it runs those as functions, right? But there's a lot more. You can see here actually, and there's also freedom for you to choose between more unmanaged services. If you want to run your database on your own, on a virtual machine, it's fine, right? You can do it. Maybe there's some requirements. It's possible. But of course, we recommend to think and consider managed or even serverless solutions and services, right? So I mentioned Lambda. We also have AWS Fargate, for example, which is a serverless compute option for containers if you have long-running tasks that you need to run. We also have services you can see here, not just compute, like databases. Aurora is a SQL database which can run serverlessly. We have analytics solutions like Redshift serverless. And we have also connective tissues like Event Bridge for events and messages. We have queues. And you may wonder, like, what does it end up looking, right? So here you see a modern three-tier application, right? It looks a lot like a traditional three-tier application. You still have data, business logic, and presentation, of course. But if you look closer, the components are actually different. This is what a modern microservice looks like, right? So we have APIs, events, and different components. Don't want to go too deep into this today. But this is where you want to end up, maybe eventually, with different microservices. So how to get there? There are different ways. First, reduce, right? Thinking about your application portfolio. Maybe there's stuff you don't need to run yourself. Use a software as a service solution. Then we already talked about lift and shift. Migrating to the cloud already helps. And that really is the first step to modernize, to re-platform using managed service, also to refactor. And of course, if you're building something new, I would challenge you, think about and ask yourself, can you run this serverless? So think serverless first, right? Using Lambda. Can this run on Lambda? Can this run on Fargate? What kind of database can I use? And with that, I want to hand over to Juan for their cost optimization journey.
So, hi everybody. Do you hear me? Because this is weird. Hi. My name is Juan. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Gronda. We are the #1 community for chefs worldwide, where they can share recipes, inspiration all around the world, right? So today we are going to be talking about our cost optimization journey and how that looked like over the last couple of years for us, our mistakes. So yeah, a little bit of agenda, our journey, what was basically based on our initial decisions, what were the main challenges, and then how we overcame them, and how we actually were able to improve. Before we start, I would like to know who here, who is the audience, works or have started a startup themselves. Can please raise this hand? Well, not many actually, only a few. So basically, this just in order to understand my slides today, I think it's important to understand how a startup works. When you start a startup, the most important thing is to really, produce a lot of features, so to say, really fast, really validate your idea, really talk to the customer. It is about failing really fast, really a lot of times, and then go back and really re-engineering everything you're doing until you actually kind of figure it out, right? So I'm not saying that performance or infrastructure is not important, but I think it's not your focus once you're starting a company. So now, once you have this moment of, you start to get some traction, you start getting some real users in your app or in your website or solution, you start thinking about performance because, you need to deliver something that actually, it's valuable for them, right? And once you start having this amount of users, having, already like working on the performance level, it is also important to start thinking of your infrastructure, right? Start thinking of a team that is going to be taking care of that infrastructure, that can bring that initial solution to the whole world and actually scale it. So that's basically how a startup goes, and actually those decisions that we made at the very beginning had an impact in our growth, and that's what we're going to talk today. So yeah, as you can see here, we spent probably 5 years trying to find product market fit. Throughout these 5 years, I think I have here, but yeah. So over these 5 years, you see that we initiated our journey with Amazon S3. Then we moved to the RDS. Then, over this time, we added multiple services, but it wasn't until last year that we really found product market fit, and we decided actually to start scaling, from our RDS instances to our compute. So just so you understand, and it was actually from 2021 to 2023, we actually multiplied by 4 the amount of users that we had. So it was in this moment for us when we started to shift from, all right, we need to build a lot of features to see what works and what not, to really starting to focus more on performance and building an infrastructure that actually can scale. Right, so for us, the growth challenges, I divided this in 3 columns. I'm going to focus on the first 2, which is basically our architectural design and also the right strategy when it comes to deciding what services and how you're going to pay those services. On the growth challenges in the architectural design, I think one of the main things is that as a startup, as mentioned before, initially you need to start building a lot of features, you need to validate your options, your solutions. And one of the things that happen is that you start building on probably bad initial foundation, so that is a problem. On top of that, AWS helps you actually to grow, so I give you a lot of credits, which is incredible as a startup, to be honest. But because of that, you leave behind a lot of bad practices, and then what happened is that you start scaling wrongly and paying a lot of money. So what happened is for us, in our case, so we decided to go with Elastic Beanstalk. In this case, it was an initial great solution because we were able to really build our initial foundation. But when we started to scale, we realized that we were paying, literally overpriced for our services because we was literally bad engineering. engineers, sorry. And at the end, what happened was that we end up, over this period of a year and a half, we multiplied by 6 of amount of instances in EC2. We multiplied by 5 the instances in RDS, 10x the amount of usage we had in CloudFront. So what happened with this is like, sometimes we had like this amount of huge peak of usage. We had a lot of moments where we didn't know, we were not able to forecast how users were going to react to certain marketing campaigns. So we needed to actually, instead of adapting to the user utilization, we were adapting basically. So we were literally preventing that getting the system down. So we were just over provisioning most of our services, and that's basically how it looked to us. In peak times, we had 30% unused services or instances running around. Off peak times, we had 80% of our instances completely unutilized. On the right strategy when it comes to payments, so I think like during this journey, as we were really focused on delivering value to our users, we probably omitted a lot of opportunities of cost savings because we didn't really know how to, we didn't know what specific size we needed to give to a specific instance or what hardware. So we also didn't really, because we didn't know that as well. So the problem was that we were not able to commit or even commit to saving plans. Because of that, over the last year and a half, or I would say 2 years and a half, our tech costs multiplied by 10. Here you can see, this is basically what I did here was I tried to get every December over the last years, and you see how we multiply by 4, also our, over 5, almost like our cost. The yellow line is basically the amount of users we were getting. So you see how we were actually growing and at the same pace as our costs. So we were paying so I think last December was around 13,000 a month, which for many big companies is maybe not that much, but for as a startup, it's a really big cost. So I mentioned before about the bad foundation, right? So that what it means for us was that we didn't even see that because we had the credits. So what happened is actually what I was reporting to our CFO was that, we are not spending that much money. And suddenly last year, it was an explosion of cost. That was the moment when we realized about this issue and we started to work on cost optimizations. So I'm gonna try to be fast here. I think like when we tried to approach this, one of the things was, all right, how do we approach the cost optimizations? I decided to see, okay, what are our main cost drivers? So we saw, okay, we have a couple of services that are really like exploding over time. And then, sorry, maybe I go here. Some of the services were exploding over time. And so I decided to just try to attack the low-hanging fruits because we didn't have a specific infrastructure team really dedicated only to that. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna list the services, see what we can do. I realized that we left behind, for example, a lot of optimizations when it comes to compute, deciding what capacity, what type of hardware you're using. We also, as I said before, didn't commit to anything. We didn't have any saving plans. So I think it's super important that you see, okay, if you're using RDS, that you stop using on demand and start paying for a commitment. That I'm going to show later how that affected us. And then one important thing is that as you are growing, you are going to realize eventually that you are leaving a lot of things in the back that you are not utilizing anymore, and that you are still paying for them. Sometimes it's small amount, sometimes it's big amount. So it's really important that you actually look back, look and check whether you have something you can actually deprecate because they tend to be quite costly. So in our case, by the way, this is not what I'm promising you're going to do. It's basically what happened to us. All right. So when it comes to optimized compute, for example, in our case, the team started to upgrade all of our hardware to Graviton, EC2 instances and RDS instances. We moved them to Graviton. We reduced 27% in EC2, 10% in RDS. And when it comes to the pricing strategy, what happened is that we started to use, so I mentioned before that we are delivering a lot of content, so this specific service was skyrocketing over time. And then we figured out, hey, wait a second. If we actually commit to a saving plan, instead of paying on demand, we are saving 30% now. In addition to that, because of the RDS commitments as well, so we say, hey, we're going to commit to that specific instance for 1 to 3 years. It was also around 30% decreased cost. By the way, this is just a couple of clicks. This doesn't require any type of high tech, behind. This is just, list your services, check around what you have, and then see whether you can upgrade or you can commit to something. So those basically are the low-hanging fruits. Now, I mentioned before that I check those, main services that were costing us a lot of money, and one of them was Elastic Beanstalk with EC2. So we decided to actually move to ECS, which is basically the fully managed container orchestration from Amazon, where you can actually decide to run your application either on an EC2 instance or in their services solution, EC2, ECS Fargate. We decided to go with Fargate because, first of all, because it just makes sense for us. So it's a fully managed service. You completely adapt. The topic of the whole scalability, it adapts to us depending on how much users you were having in the application. And on the other hand, you don't need to manage the EC2 instance anymore. So for us, designing with ECS Fargate, so we had an improvement in performance, as I said before. So first of all, the scalability. So here what happened is that now, one of the main issues of EBS is that it was really slow to scale for us, so we needed to over-provision. Now with ECS Fargate, we can divide this into smaller tasks, and they can scale super fast horizontally. Cost-wise, now you have a much more complete visualization of your cost at a task level. Before, you only see what you're spending on Elastic Beanstalk. Now you see on a task level what you're spending. And then again, with the auto-scaling, you have this possibility of, utilizing better the resources because you only need to decide the size of your task and your service. And then on an operational level, I think what was also for us super important was the decision of, okay, we now have an infrastructure team, but what do we want to focus on? So if you see operations, you always think of your development life cycles. You have like coding, building infrastructure, then you have deployment to production, then you have maintaining that application, and then also upgrading, patching, all observability. So we decided that, okay, now that we're going to invest on this, we want to invest in what it means, what it is creating business value. We don't want to really focus on managing services. And ECS Fargate actually provided us that. So it's a fully managed service. That's why we decided to go with them. So we did. And now, so this is not 100%, how it works, but basically now what you see is that now, since we can now divide our application into smaller tasks that are much more easy to track, now we are able to also do the proper right sizing of our application. So now, if you divide, before we have one single application, now we have two different tasks that you can better provide the right sizing. Now we have much more or less unused utilization, so you don't have this situation where like we will have, for example, the double amount of instances just because we didn't know. So now we have these smaller tasks that actually could help us to, in case of a high peak of usage because there was a marketing campaign on an Instagram post that went viral, that adapts, now with ECS, this adapts, really fast. So yeah. And yeah, so next steps, I will say, so I mentioned it is important to attack the low-hanging fruits first, not really over-engineer the topic of cost optimization, and then check your main cost drivers and really attack what is costing you the most. In our case, was CloudFront and EBS or Elastic Beanstalk, and then keep reiterating. So I think that as a startup, that's super important. Amazon keeps bringing new services, so I think throughout the year you can always do one or two tweaks that can help your costs. Sorry if I talk too fast. I think we only have 15 minutes, so yeah, thank you so much. And now I'm gonna head to Nikolai, which basically is gonna, I talk as a startup. He's gonna continue as a scale up now.
Hello, 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 everyone. You probably can hear me, right? Awesome, awesome. You shaking heads. This is really interesting setup. Usually you have a quiet room and people listening to you. Now other people listening somewhere there and you just watching with these lights. I feel myself like I'm recording a podcast on the train station, you know? Such a loud here environment, but it's okay. Let's move on. So as you know, my name is Nikolai. I am head of engineering Scalable. And in this talk, I would like to share with you our experience. How did we ended up with the high cost? How did we manage it to lower, reduce it, and stabilize it? Which strategy we used, which tools we used, and what approach can also help you. But before that, I would like to ask you a few questions. Could you please raise your hand if you, in your company, have a cost control process in any form or shape? Quite many people. I would say at least half of the audience. Let's see how many of you are believing that you have a cost-effective bill at the end of the day, every month. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So for many of you who don't have any cost control process, that might be interesting. For many of you who has cost control process and still not happy with AWS bill, that's okay, it's normal. You will get used to. But I will show you some other interesting ideas. How can you reduce the cost here and there? So we will talk today about what the cost in hypergrowth mode when you do not spend too much time and effort for the expenses on the infrastructure. What strategy did we apply to manage it and bring it back and control? How did we implement the strategy and how the cost looked like afterwards? So the year from 2021 to 2022, we experienced a hypergrowth in many different areas. We delivered a lot of features. We grew in the user base. We increased our assets under management. And obviously our infrastructure cost was increasing as well accordingly. For us, working in the highly regulated environment, like financial industry service, we have to keep a lot of data. And the data for us is a big thing. So it also grew a lot. Every month, dollar by dollar, the price, at the end of the month, the bill was bigger and bigger. And like many, many others, we didn't care too much attention or enough attention to that. Because in the hypergrowth mode, you look for features, for clients, for many other KPIs. Unfortunately, there was a very unprecedented event in the world that also had an impact on us. Many people in a very unclear environment start chasing for financial services. So we experienced a lot of traffic, we experienced a lot of requests, and we ended up with this. On the right-hand side, you can see the bar. So we couldn't go like that so long. We had to come up with some strategy. We decided that our strategy, how to control the cost, will consist of 3 important steps. First step is to identify exactly your cost drivers. Get more insights in your cost. Use any tool what you have, but just to understand and break it down the cost to understand where it comes from. The second step is probably the most difficult one. You need to collaborate with many, many other people, many developers, many different teams, and together with them come up with different initiatives that can help you to bring the cost down and take it under control. And the third step of our strategy was to implement best practices. Some of them already been mentioned, some of them I can share later on in other slides. But having those practices in place allows you to keep your cost control process in a much more smooth and automatic way. So we started from gaining insights. We started from, obviously, Cost Explorer, that tool available for everyone. The beauty of the tool that you can get you can get it very easy. You can share the access to developers very easy. And it's just very, very easy to use. There are many different dimensions. There are many different filters. You can break down your cost to the very, very small element of your infrastructure. But we didn't stop here. In addition to that, we added another tool, which is also offered by AWS. It's a Kudos dashboard based on the QuickSight. And for us, we have a very nice overview on the trends. We can build custom dashboards for different departments. For example, financial department may have completely own overview with this dashboard. Engineering departments or other teams may have different view on that. But for us, what was most important that we could easily get automatic email at the beginning of every month to see how much did we spend. And everybody in the company, engineering, product department, all of us receive the email where we can see what's going on. That boosts transparency, that has a lot of beneficial values. People start care more about cost. This is one of the biggest challenge, by the way, whenever you take care about the cost. You need to motivate and encourage other people to take care about the cost as well as you. It's not easy, but this is a very interesting and good step forward. So out of these insights, we identify the biggest contributors to the cost. Without any big surprise, two biggest contributors in our case is compute power and storage. Both of them have a share of 61, if I'm not wrong. There are no percentage here. Okay, 61%, I think. So it's more than half of the cost goes just for that. But when you have all of these big contributors categories, it doesn't help too much. Like you know that, okay, storage is too much, compute power is too much, but what to do next? We need to go deeper, and we need to come up with more detailed view and understand a little bit more what kind of other categories we have in those contributor sections. So we have come up with 6 different directions where we identify the opportunities for the cost reduction. Clearly, optimizing compute power is one of the big cost driver. So there we have found solutions like switching the architecture to Amazon Graviton, proper scaling, scheduled scaling, many things you can implement for non-production environment. Many times people just forget and leave their instances up and running on weekends, on long days off, or even nights. Many cases you don't need them. And you can scale them based on the schedule. And that brings a lot of already value for you. On the storage optimization, S3 for us is, as I said, a very big thing. And on the storage optimization, we have found many, many interesting opportunities. Many times, different objects in your buckets have different patterns, access patterns. And the straightforward solution, let's decide which object goes to which storage class, and that's it. But that's actually time consuming, and you need to know quite a lot and collaborate with other teams quite a lot. So instead of that, you may enable intelligent tier. There is some cost, some fee for transition, but a part of that, it brings a lot of value. The AWS automatically, based on machine learning algorithms, detects based on the access to the files, to the objects, actually automatically decides to which storage type your object should belong to. And that brings us also quite significant discount. With the networking, whenever we scale up and scale down, usually the networking comes with a certain, or maybe the scalability itself comes with a certain overhead in networking. Different VPC endpoints may be created just because of you increase more or decrease number of instances. And all of that can be mitigated. You can reduce not needed availability zones. You may not need 3 availability zones in non-production environment. On production, no question. But there is development environment, test environment, maybe staging environment. There are multiple different environments, and there you may not need them. And you will be very much surprised how much cost you can reduce if you will remove just not needed resources. Logging and backup. Well, here you need to be careful. Especially as we work in a highly regulated environment, for us, it's very important to keep logs and have backups for quite a long time. But again, for non-production environments, you can reduce many, many things here. You may not need very complicated and expensive backups solutions. For example, AWS offers a very nice AWS backup solution, which is centralized, managed service that can take care about all your backups. Would it be volumes, would it be storages, doesn't matter, S3 bucket, everything goes there. It's nice. But it comes with price. And in our case, for example, we found that if we will go with S3 replication, we will save quite a lot of money. So just to give you a projection that with AWS backup, we would spend on the storage, on the backup, $250,000 just in a year. It's a big, significant amount of money which you can save for something else. All right, we have 6 different categories and many different initiatives. Now you need to understand which one to tackle. Which one you want to tackle first. And we come up with certain metrics that helps us identify which initiative should go first. But frankly, even having all of them, it doesn't help too much. You still have a lot of doubts and questions. So we decided to simplify the overview and come up with just a more or less comprehensive matrix of effort and benefits. So to recap everything what I just said, look into your infrastructure, look into your architecture. As Alex already mentioned today earlier, architecture is usually the biggest cost driver. If your architecture has a lot of legacy, has a lot of debt, you may not have capabilities to properly scale up or scale down. You may have bad technology choice that doesn't allow you properly to scale up or scale down. Look into volumes. New volumes are every time cheaper. Look into Graviton. Certainly helps a lot. Look into, as I said, S3 and logs and backups. All of that can bring a lot of value and save you money. I did press on the button. Here it goes. All right, but whenever you implement all of these, and you feel more or less kind of, okay, cost got down, we more or less starting saving, you need to implement the real robust process of controlling that cost does not go up again, and cost will go. This is the real truth, that the cost will go every time up. And your job is to put it down, take it under control, and save it on a certain level. This is the best result. You can do it if you apply AWS budget, cost anomaly detection. Clearly, you can't go without resource tagging. You would have to design a very sophisticated resource tagging solution for you that may have different complexity here and there, but without proper tagging would be very, very difficult to do something. And apply Trusted Advisor. It also tells you many, many interesting hints where you can save. And at the end of the day, in the next year, from 2022 till now, we managed to expand our business to other European countries like Netherlands, France, Spain, Italy. We managed to launch multiple new features like instant payment or security details in our brokerage application. We started offering 2.3%. We grew, even though the year was not easy. And it was not easy not only for us, it was not easy for everyone. Nevertheless, you can see that we managed to bring our costs down and take it under control. I hope that I encourage you to take a look into your cost, talk to your developers. If you are a developer, take a look into your services. The cost control is not easy, but it's manageable. Thank you very much. Over to Alex.
Thanks, Nikolai. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, just wrapping up very quickly. First, create an overview of your AWS cost, right? So Cost Explorer, kudos, tagging, right? Make use of it. Optimize your TCO. We talked about a lot of strategies today. If you don't know where to start, go to Trusted Advisor. It's a great place. And uncover further cost optimization potential. We have the well-architected framework. There's the cost optimization pillar. Take a look. Also talk to the account team, approach us. Yeah, go on the journey to optimize the TCO. I also want to highlight the Startup Loft. We have events there. You can book one-on-one sessions with experts, also talk about cost optimization, and we have a resource hub as well. With that, thanks a lot, and please rate our session in the mobile app. We really appreciate your feedback. Thanks a lot, and see you soon. If you have any questions, please just come to us after the session.